Most people think they already know what China looks like. But beyond its giant cities, there is a very different China. Clouds drift across isolated mountain peaks. Ancient villages still survive in dry seas of sand. Monasteries cover cold hillsides. People build roads, bridges, and settlements in places that seem almost impossible to reach. This is a China of unbelievable landscapes and bold human creations. Today, we begin a journey into places that much of the world has never seen. Ganges' secret realm hides ancient ruins, the only place in the world said to contain an 8-sided ancient city with no blind spots, an abandoned military maze from 2,000 years ago. The structure stands in a vast grassland with a hollow cross-like layout, forming a rare geometric design associated with cosmological symbols in Tibetan Buddhism. Its 8-sided design allows full control of the surrounding space without blind areas, while also breaking away from the traditional square city layout of ancient Chinese urban planning. A natural white cliff stretches for about 9 miles across the grassland, creating a geographical barrier that isolates the area from the outside. Inside this cliff lies Baixia Karst Cave, where local legends suggest underground passages may extend for more than 31 miles. The cave also preserves evidence of Denisovan humans from 160,000 years ago, making Ganges a rare intersection of archaeology, geology, and human evolutionary history. Libo Grand Cliff holds the record for a giant spatial fissure, an invisible wall that permanently hides an ancient ecosystem at the bottom of the abyss. This place is not a mountain, but a geological fault about 6,600 feet deep, where a vast grassland is suddenly cut into a vertical void. The fracture extends for dozens of miles, completely separating the Daliangshan Plateau from the Xiaoliangshan Canyon system that remains covered in mist. The edge of the fault almost removes all signs of the modern world, as there is no phone signal or power infrastructure. The Yi community in the Lamay area continues to live on rock ledges just below the cliff edge. Right beside the vertical drop, their livestock still graze on narrow strips of land, maintaining daily life at the boundary of a vast, empty space. The Shenzhen-Zhongshan link is known as a gateway through space, where people suddenly disappear in the middle of the sea along an ocean crossing route. Located in Guangdong, China, this project combines three connected structures: an elevated suspension bridge, artificial islands in the sea, and an immersed tunnel beneath the ocean floor. From above, the bridge stretches for dozens of miles and does not end in a normal way, but enters an artificial island before disappearing from the water surface. That disappearing section is a large, hollow, steel-immersed tunnel with 8 traffic lanes operating under seawater pressure. To support tens of thousands of vehicles beneath the sea, the artificial islands are fitted with large ventilation towers that move air into the tunnel. Thanks to this system, a journey that once took about 2 hours between the two shores is reduced to around 20 minutes. Chishui Great Waterfall is recognized by UNESCO as part of the Danxia landscape, where fractured geology and primitive prehistoric traces still exist. Located within a vast red sandstone region, the waterfall carries reddish sediment during the rainy season, causing the current to share the same color as the surrounding cliffs. The waterfall is 249 feet high and 262 feet wide, forming a large curtain of water that seems to cut the valley into a vast, empty space. When tens of thousands of tons of water crash into the basin below, the strong pressure pushes mist upward and covers the space in front of the falls. Surrounding the area are forests of Alsophila, an ancient tree fern that existed during the age of dinosaurs. The dark red cliff behind the waterfall was hidden by the deep valley and mist for centuries, leaving this place almost absent from the records of ancient Eastern explorers. Kuopagu National Nature Reserve is a secret chamber of nature, where every rock and stream seems to carry an unexplained primitive code. The valley is surrounded by dense ancient fir forests, with thick moss beneath the trees absorbing sound and creating an almost completely silent environment. The surface of Kuopu Lake is as still as a mirror, clearly reflecting the sharp and steep ridgelines of the Jajinjiabo Mountains. In this lake, underwater life shows clear responses to signals from humans, creating a rare form of interaction. Beneath the layers of soil and ice is a continuously active geothermal system, with hot springs and rising steam forming a moving mist across the valley. For many decades, this area was almost completely isolated because there was no paved road access, allowing its ecosystem to operate on its own cycle. Laronggar Buddhist Academy is the largest Buddhist monastic settlement in the world, yet it functions as a hidden city sealed within a deep valley basin. The entire area sits in a curved depression filled with tens of thousands of dark red wooden huts, housing about 40,000 monks and nuns while producing almost no urban noise. From above, the layout resembles a mandala pattern, where the repetition of color and structure makes spatial orientation difficult. The red rooftops extend from the mountain slopes down to the valley floor, forming a continuous surface across the terrain. Despite being the largest monastic complex of its kind, the site remains socially and culturally isolated from surrounding secular systems. Upon entering Laronggar, individuals leave behind their previous identities and integrate into a collective monastic structure. Fangshan Mountain is located in Zhejiang Province, and it is an unusual geological body shaped like a one-of-a-kind giant cube. Its summit is as flat as a stone table at an elevation of about 650 to 1,000 feet, appearing from a distance like a square block cut by an invisible blade. Surrounding the mountain are cliffs close to 90 degrees, forming a natural barrier that isolates the world on top from the land below. On the dry limestone surface, hundreds of feet above the ground, lakes and wetlands still exist like a suspended ecosystem. When water spills over the edge, strong winds can tear the falling stream into mist before it reaches the ground. Fangshan was formed by volcanic eruptions during the Cretaceous period and is now part of a UNESCO Global Geopark, preserving traces of hardened lava from about 100 million years ago. Lianbao Yeze does not resemble any mountain on Earth, as it is a massive complex of black granite formations rising straight into the sky and often compared to a ghost city. This difference comes from rock masses that do not form cones or gentle slopes, but stand as smooth, dark vertical walls surrounding high mountain basins. As a whole, the landscape gives the impression of a Gothic metropolis that has been fossilized for millions of years. At the center of this terrain lies Jaga Quo Lake at an elevation of 15,092 feet, with dark water that nearly hides its true depth. In winter, snow covers the thin vegetation layer, causing the black rock formations to appear as if they are floating within a nearly weightless white environment. Prayer flags in multiple colors and a white Tibetan stupa stand silently beside the glacial lake, marking the spiritual boundary before the isolated stone mountains of Lianbaoyes. Shangru Peaks hold the record as the most human body-like geological wonder on Earth, a surreal illusion that deceives every gaze. Located in Jianfeng County, Guizhou Province, these two mountains rise from the valley with a shape resembling a woman's breasts, and each peak stands at over 650 feet tall. That form was not created by humans, but by karst terrain shaped through erosion, leaving behind two unusually balanced cone-shaped peaks. The mountain surface is covered with grass and low shrubs, allowing the vegetation to follow the natural curves like a living skin that changes color with the seasons. When humidity rises, mist often condenses in the narrow space between the two peaks, forming its own small microclimate. For the local Buye people, this place is connected to fertility beliefs and quiet spiritual practices within the valley. Diaoyuan is recognized as one of the strangest and best preserved forms of underground dwelling in the world, where the living space is inverted because people live below the ground rather than on it. This underground village system has a history of more than 4,000 years, created by digging large square pits into thick earth and then carving rooms into the four walls. The boundary between the upper and lower worlds becomes unusual because the roof of the residence below is also the wheat field walked across by people above. The sunken courtyards are usually square or rectangular, about 20 to 23 feet deep, and sometimes contain old trees growing from within them. Without concrete or modern machinery, this structure still maintains a stable climate and has survived for many centuries. This architecture developed because the Loess Plateau has thick soil that is easy to dig and provides strong insulation, so some sites are still inhabited today or preserved for visitors. Fenglin covers an area of about 772 square miles, and it is the only place known for a vast optical illusion created by thousands of nearly identical peaks rising from the ground. These isolated cone-shaped hills are spread across a flat plain and are actually remnants of an ancient ocean that existed about 270 million years ago. Because no single peak stands out, the entire landscape creates a sense of repetition and makes orientation difficult. Between the hills are rice fields and villages located at the base of the mountains, where people use shade and terrain conditions to support daily life. Some low-lying areas here are natural sinkholes, where the ground has subsided and pulled the surrounding fields into clear, circular patterns. Historically, this terrain functioned as a natural visual barrier, allowing local communities to remain hidden from external conflicts for long periods. Snow plow fleet is a brutal mechanical force that clears winter landscapes in extreme regions such as Altai in Xinjiang and the Tibetan Plateau. Unlike regular plows, rotary snow plows use massive rotating blades to shred thick ice walls and blast the snow dozens of yards away like a white jet. When blizzards arrive, sky and ground merge into a single white field, and snow, layers tens of feet deep, can bury entire transport routes. After the fleet passes, the result is not an open road, but a narrow trench carved between two vertical walls of snow. During major snow events, these machines operate day and night under piercing headlights, turning road clearing into a continuous battle against darkness, ice, and relentless weather pressure. Tagong grassland sits at an elevation of more than 12,100 feet in Gaze, Sichuan, appearing as a peaceful grassland, while actually covering a vast spiritual platform of Tibet. Legend says that more than 1,000 years ago, a statue of Shakyamuni Buddha became impossibly heavy while passing through this place, forcing people to build a monastery at that exact location. The landscape of Tagong is divided into two clear layers, with wildflower plains below and the icy barrier of Mount Yala rising above at 19,095 feet. Here, faith is expressed through millions of prayer flags and carved stone tablets hidden among the grass. Muya Golden Pagoda stands out in the grassland with a spire covered in more than 220 pounds of pure gold. Esoteric Tibetan legends also claim that beneath the grass and stones of Tagong lie Terma, hidden teachings sealed by Guru Padmasambhava thousands of years ago. Nanpu Bridge escapes the definition of a dull urban transport structure, becoming a futuristic piece of mega infrastructure shaped like a giant steel dragon. The main bridge across the Huangpu River is suspended by massive cable-stayed bundles crossing diagonally, forming a load-bearing frame like steel tendons within the city. The approach ramp on the Puxi side is not a straight slope, but a three-level spiral twisted into itself within a tight urban space. Because there was no room for a long approach road, engineers had to coil miles of expressway and force the concrete to rise vertically. Every day, tens of thousands of vehicles have to keep turning through this circular path before being lifted onto the high bridge span above the river. Nanpu Bridge became a key connection between Puxi and Pudong, helping trigger the rapid rise of Shanghai's skyline. Jagana is the only place on Earth with a terrain that resembles a giant stone box, concealing an entire village suspended above deep cliffs that remained unnoticed for centuries. The entire area is enclosed by fractured limestone walls rising over 13,000 feet, forming a space that is nearly completely sealed from all four sides. For a long period, even merchant caravans passing through the region were unaware of the existence of a community living inside the mountain basin. After crossing the only narrow opening, the interior reveals dark wooden houses positioned along steep slopes and above deep drops. Below, dense forests of ancient conifer trees grow in tangled formations, creating complex natural structures that are difficult to access. During winter, heavy snow blocks the narrow entrances, isolating Jagana entirely and cutting off all contact with the outside world. Litang is an ancient town perched at an elevation of more than 13,000 feet in the Kham region of Tibet, and it is considered one of the highest settlements ever known. From the outside, this place looks like a vast grassland, but it is actually a cold desert with almost no large trees for shelter even in winter. Litang is still inhabited today by Tibetan communities, and they have survived for centuries through herding, nomadic life, and adaptation to thin air. Within that silent grassland, the Genyan Eye appears as a solitary round pool, bordered by rings of withered grass on open ground. Without large burial grounds, sky burial rituals in Litang use bearded vultures with wingspans of about 10 feet to process bodies according to local tradition. National Highway 318 is the main route into the area, but it is often disrupted by deep cliffs, landslides, and avalanches. Guozigu Bridge holds the image of a futuristic zipper, using tens of thousands of tons of suspended steel to stitch together a deep fracture in the Tian Shan Mountains. The bridge does not begin from a flat road, but has one end inserted directly into a mountain tunnel near Sairam Lake before curving across Guozigu Valley in Xinjiang. With a height of about 656 feet from the deck to the valley floor, it was once one of the largest, highest, and most expensive bridge projects in the mountainous areas of this autonomous region. Beneath the bridge is a primeval forest of Schrenk spruce, where dark green canopies interlock and conceal almost the entire valley floor. The bridge also stands along a clear climatic boundary, where the northern side of the valley may be buried in a snowstorm, while the southern side toward Ili remains sunny. With a length of about 2,300 feet, the bridge replaces a dangerous winding mountain road and significantly reduces travel time through the Tian Shan region. Feitianyan is known as the Balcony of the Void, where the ground ends abruptly and opens into a hidden space among the clouds. It is a geological cut deep within the mountains of Guizhou Province, China, with a vertical limestone cliff rising more than 3,300 feet. When the Sea of Clouds appears, the mountaintop and the village are separated from the valley below, creating the impression of an island suspended in the air. Dozens of households still live on the edge of this fractured cliff, in houses built from simple raw materials. Over time, the colors of wood, roof tiles, and stone blend into the white mist, causing the whole village to nearly disappear into the cliff face. Driaboi Ancient Village is a settlement that remained absent from all human maps for centuries, buried deep within a vast sea of sand and almost invisible to the civilized world. The village lies in the core of the Taklamakan Desert, where countless dunes constantly change shape with the wind and erase footprints, paths, or any clues for access. Around the oasis are ancient populous Euphratica forests, with long-lived trunks twisted into unusual forms. It was not until the late 20th century that researchers recorded the existence of a community living here without clear data about its origin. The only water source is the Korea River, which flows deep into the desert and then disappears underground without connecting to any sea or lake. Geographic isolation and shifting terrain have kept Driaboi in an almost completely separated state for a long period of time. Ganhaizi Bridge is a place where a steel lattice maze is unintentionally suspended in the sky, like a giant steel skeleton, winding at an elevation of more than 8,200 feet. The bridge is made from tens of thousands of slender steel tubes woven into a light and hollow structure that can flex and vibrate under wind and fractured terrain conditions. It crosses a dangerous geological zone of the Hengduan Mountains, with curved sections hugging the mountain slopes and often covered by mist rising from the valley. Beneath the deck are 36 lattice steel piers, the tallest reaching 351 feet and rising from the valley floor like a grey iron forest. It is the world's longest bridge using lattice concrete-filled steel tube piers, a rare design that turns the structure into an artificial geological body. Without Ganhaizi, the heart of the Ya'an-Shichang Expressway would be cut off at the Ganhaizi area, preventing the route from operating seamlessly between Chengdu and the southern regions. Bamiyan Mountain has a grassland suspended in the sky, shaped like a giant stranded vessel floating in a dark ocean of clouds. This mountain does not have a sharp peak like ordinary terrain, but is a rock mass cut flat, leaving a plateau of about 20 square miles at an elevation of 3,937 feet. It is surrounded by limestone cliffs close to 90 degrees, making the entire mountaintop appear separated from the ground below. On that flat summit, a large green grassland still exists, with houses, farmland, and livestock activities maintained by local residents. This terrain once turned Bamiyan into a natural fortress, isolating regional travel and trade for many centuries. To reach the flat summit, people have to follow stairways and narrow paths clinging to the cliff face, where each rising section reveals the natural isolation of Bamiyan Mountain. Li of Luoji Mountain is the largest hot spring waterfall in the world, hidden deep within the core of the Daliangshan Mountains in Sichuan province, where a giant waterfall does not run cold, but pours out water at about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. This water emerges from many hidden cracks halfway up the cliff, then falls from dozens of yards high into a wild mountain forest. Beneath and behind the hot water curtain are natural hollow caves where steam accumulates and turns the rock space into a geothermal steam room. The bathing spots are not located on flat ground, but inside honeycomb-shaped natural hollows clinging to the cliff face. This constant hot and humid environment allows black moss and ferns to grow thickly across the rock surface. At this place, visitors can experience soaking in natural rock pools suspended on the cliff face, surrounded by hot steam, dark caves, and the forests of the Daliangshan Mountains. Xinyiuzhai Cliff Store is the most inconvenient convenience store on the planet. A 2-square-meter wooden box nailed directly onto a vertical cliff. Located in Hunan Province, China, this store is anchored to a nearly 90-degree Dangxia cliff and hangs about 394 feet above the valley floor. With no road access or elevator, water and food are delivered by a cable pulley system or carried up by workers early in the morning. The dark red cliff has almost no horizontal surface to stand on, making the entire space feel pulled into a vertical direction. Across the rock face are U-shaped iron rungs from the Via Ferrata system, forming a climbing route along the cliff wall. Visitors here experience climbing on a vertical rock face and stopping halfway above the abyss to receive supplies from a small store hanging in the air. Redstone Forest is a fossilized seabed from 450 million years ago, lifted out of the water by geological faults and exposed on a mist-covered plateau. Tens of thousands of stone pillars here have a distinct color-changing quality, turning the entire forest visibly red under strong sunlight. The unusual feature lies in the fact that the rocks beneath your feet were once ancient marine sediments, preserving traces of sea life before being raised into a plateau landscape. The stone pillars rise densely like red fingers pointing toward the sky, while narrow gaps and crossing fissures form a silent walking network for visitors. Between the rocks, dark green vegetation clings to the cliff surfaces, with deep green pools scattered through the fractured terrain. When the stones shift from red to black or dark purple, local people regard it as a sign that heavy rain or strong winds may soon descend into the valley. Can you believe that in a place with only a smooth rock wall, people still managed to build a road suspended halfway above a deep abyss, and that truly happened at Jianmen Pass? This pass lies between cliffs that rise almost 90 degrees, where the entire route through the mountains is locked by a narrow natural opening. More than 2,000 years ago, the cliffside section of the Shu Road was opened by carving into rock and building a path along the precipice, under conditions marked by rockfalls and deadly labor accidents. That rare fracture in the stone wall also formed a natural wind tunnel, making the defensive terrain even harder to approach. For many centuries, Jianmen Pass was regarded as a gateway that could hardly be broken by a direct frontal attack. Along the Shu Road, thousands of ancient cypress trees over 2,000 years old still anchor their roots into the rocks beside the route. Baisha Lake appears like an ink painting, with a turquoise surface set among white mountain ranges on the Pamir Plateau. Located along the Karakoram Highway in Xinjiang, it creates an optical illusion because the white layer on the mountains is not snow or ice, but fine sand lifted from the lake bed by violent winds and fixed onto the cliffs. The present Blue Lake is linked to an artificial reservoir where rising water after a hydropower project swallowed ancient wetlands and nomadic grazing grounds. Beneath the still surface are old vegetation layers, former ground surfaces, and traces of an ecosystem that existed before being sealed away. Around the lake, the landscape is reduced almost entirely to three clear colors: gray sky, white sand, and sharp blue water. This space is almost empty of birds, fish, and insects, creating the impression of an inorganic zone isolated within the plateau. Ganzi Solar Energy Park is a giant energy project of humanity, but it is located on the wild plateau of Tibet, surrounded by permanent snow mountains with an unreal appearance. Between ancient grasslands and hills, millions of dark blue solar panels are layered along the slopes, forming a silent ocean of mirrors. From above, the entire area looks like a vast geometric armor spread across the natural surface. Beneath those panels is a less visible ecosystem where sheep move through the shade between the rows of panels. The complex contains more than 2 million solar panels, covering about 172 million square feet, equivalent to more than 2,000 soccer fields. Electricity from this site is transmitted to millions of people in major cities of eastern China, such as Chengdu and Chongqing. If water is supposed to extinguish fire, then at Baicheng Flame Spring, you will witness water that appears to burn, where water cannot put out the flame. The fire does not rely on wood or oil, but burns directly on the surface of the spring, creating a continuous heat source in a dry environment. The site is located near Kizil Devil City, where eroded rock formations and unusual landforms create a landscape shaped by wind and sand. Beneath Baicheng, in the Tarim Basin, are layers of methane gas trapped thousands of feet underground, slowly leaking to the surface and sustaining the flame. Around the spring, The ground is dark gray and burned, with no moss or vegetation able to grow. This burned ring not only shows that underground gas is still leaking, but also indicates an ancient energy system that has been quietly active beneath the Tarim Basin for millions of years. Mount Sapu is known as the Eternal Ice Pyramid of Asia because its shape is so regular and sharp that many people think it looks man-made. Its main summit rises to nearly 23,000 feet, with steep and clean faces that look very different from most ordinary ice-covered mountains. From this massif, a permanent glacier tongue drops straight into a sacred lake at about 16,400 feet, creating large floating blocks of ice on the water. Near the cracked glacier surface, you will see a deep peacock blue color appears from inside the ice, formed by snow and ice compressed tightly over many thousands of years. In summer, wildflowers still bloom right beside the long-lasting ice walls, placing ice, rock, water, and plant life in the same scene. For many centuries, Sapu was almost absent from common travel maps and was mostly known through word of mouth among people who explore difficult off-road routes. Panlong Ancient Road has more than 600 curves, making it one of the paved roads with the highest density of turns in the world. From above, it does not look like a normal road, but like a giant black python, tightly coiled on the roof of the world. The dark asphalt contrasts sharply with the bare gray and yellow mountains of the Pamir Plateau, creating a surface that looks like a lifeless planet. The road is located in Tashkurgan County, near a difficult border region where China meets Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Pakistan, and it is surrounded by the snow-covered peaks of the Kunlun Mountains. Its highest point reaches about 13,780 feet, but it was originally built only to help a few dozen nomadic families move sheep across the mountains more easily. There are almost no gas stations or rest stops along the route, so once a vehicle enters this chain of curves, it can only keep moving forward until it fully exits the road. Laigu Glacier is a system of 6 glaciers gathered around an old Tibetan village, and it remains one of the core areas where the natural glacial landscape has not been heavily altered by industrial tourism. Deep in the Tibetan Plateau, this is a rare maritime glacier system, so its snow buildup and ice movement are much faster than those of dry continental glaciers. The ice here shows a strong turquoise blue color because snow has been compressed for tens of thousands of years, and during the melting season, the glacier front cracks and pushes huge ice blocks into the lake, creating a scene more often seen in polar regions. The main glacier, Yalong, stretches about 7.5 miles, and its broken edge forms a vertical ice wall dozens of feet high across the valley horizon. In contrast to the freezing ice mass, the nearby slopes are covered with conifer forest, moss, and native shrubs. But Laigu is also shrinking because of climate change. Even so, in winter, you can still walk across the frozen lake and enter glowing blue ice caves without using technical climbing gear.